All right, so let's start working on this program. So it says I explained the instructions in the last video, so I'm just going to read through and kind of look for some things to help me get started. Well, the first thing I probably should do is put my name and description. Calculates GPA for a semester. All right, so we want to write a program that asks the user what classes they're taking. So I'm going to actually leave that comment as the top comment because I'm going to do that right underneath. For each class they are taking, prompt them for a letter grade and a number of credits. That tells me the very next thing I'm going to need is probably a for loop for classes because it says for each class. That means I'm going to repeat something. If I'm going to repeat it, then I probably want a loop. Um, so I'm going to use a for loop here. Convert each letter grade to its grade point value. Example A to 4.0, A minus to 3.7. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add if statement to convert grades. And then once I'm done, I need to use this formula, which is you take the grade point and you multiply it by its credits, and then you divide it by the sum. And then after you sum all that up, you divide it by the sum of the credits. Um, I'm probably going to take a loop that multiplies these together, and we'll see what we do from there, but that means I'm going to need another loop. So I'm going to say for loop for calculation. And then after calculating, display one of these exact messages. So then after that, we'll just need our if statement. And that should end us off with our program. Now I'm going to go through and see kind of what variables I'm probably going to need in this program. So it looks like every time we prompt them, we do prompt them for a letter grade and a number of classes. Their letter grade is going to be a letter and the number of classes is going to be a number. So I'm going to create those two variables here. Create variables. So I'll say let letter grade equal an empty string for now. Let num credits equal 0. And then I'm going to take their letter grade and convert it to a GPA. So I probably need a GPA variable. Um, and actually, I need this to be single class GPA because I'm going to have an overall GPA variable there. And so then that means I need to create an overall. So I'll say final GPA, and I'll set that equal to 0. And it looks like that's most of the variables I'm going to need. I do know that I'm going to be asking them for the number of credits and the letter grade. So I'm probably going to need two arrays because I'm going to be storing multiple pieces of information and I don't know how many I'm going to store. So I can't just say let var1, let var2, because I don't know how many variables I'm going to create. So I need two arrays here. So I'm going to create those. I'll say let um, and rather than storing the letter grade, I'll probably just store the single class GPA. So I'll say class GPAs is equal to an empty array. And then I'll create another one. And I'm going to call this let um, class weight equal an empty array. And that's where I'm going to store the credits for each class. So I think that's the variables I'm going to need. I'm going to start writing my program and we'll see if we need some more. So we first need to ask the user for the number of classes they're taking. So we're going to say, oh, well, there we go. We need another one. But I'm going to create it right here and give it a value. So we're going to say let num classes equal, and then this is going to be a prompt. Prompts always return strings. If you're prompting for a string, you do need to convert it to a number. Since we are going to use this in our for loop later, we're going to want to convert it to a number. So I'm going to use number, and then I'm going to say prompt, how many classes in this semester? And then I need to loop through each of the classes. So I'm going to say for let counter equal 0. So this counter is going to count in my loop. How long do I want the loop to run? Well, I want to run it for the exact number of classes they entered. So if they entered 3 classes, I want to ask them for their class 3 times. If I start at 0, then I'm going to go 0, 1, 2, and that will be 3 times. Um, and so if they entered the number 3, I want this loop to go from 0 to 2. So in other words, I want to run just less than whatever number they entered. So I'm going to say keep running this loop while counter is less than number of classes. And I'm going to put a semicolon. And then which direction do I want to go? Well, if I'm starting at 0 and I want to go up to the number of classes, then I need to increment. In order to increment, I could say, well, I could say counter equals counter plus 1, which could also be abbreviated as counter plus equals 1, but it also could just be abbreviated as counter plus plus. I know I'm going to be taking 2 inputs here, so this is going to be a multi-line for loop, which means I'm going to need curly braces. Um, and kind of as I go, I do like to format my code, so I'm going to hold Option Shift F or Alt Shift F on a Windows. That'd format my code. It looks like it's met whatever formatting I have set for my VS Code, so I'm just going to leave things be. All right. In the for loop, I need an if statement to convert grades, and I'm going to move that into the for loop by holding Option and hitting the up arrow. So, well, first, I probably need to get those grades. So I need to prompt for a letter grade and the number of credits that it is. So I'll say actually, I've already created the letter grade variable, so I'll just say letter grade equals prompt. What is your letter grade for class? And then I'm going to concatenate on the counter plus 1 so that the user doesn't see what is your letter grade for class 0. They'll see what is your letter grade for class 1 and so on and so forth. So that'll give us our letter grade. And then we need to figure out how many credits it was worth. So we'll say prompt, and I'm going to use, on the last one I did concatenation. So on this one, I'll do a formatted string. It's your choice which one you use. But I'll say, okay, number of credits is how many credits was, and then we'll do $ curly brace, counter plus 1 worth. And we'll say how many credits was class counter plus 1 worth. Now remember, this is a prompt and we are wanting a number here. So we probably need to convert this to a number. So we'll say number prompt, how many credits was this class worth? And then we'll close that parenthesis. So we're taking a prompt, converting it to a number, and then we're storing it in the credits. So I'm going to put here gather user inputs. And then here is where I need to put my if statement for grades. And I have this in another file. I would strongly recommend grabbing it from the last homework assignment where you did this. You don't have to retype it again. So I'm going to come to my desktop and I have mine in first website, wherever the heck that folder went. There it is, first website. And I have mine in lettergrade to GPA.html. I meant to open that in Visual Studio Code, but if you want to copy it and you, like me, opened the wrong window, you can hit Command Option I or Control Shift I. You can come over here to Elements. You can open up the script tag. And I'm just going to grab this first letter grade right here. So I'm going to scroll down to the else and copy it. Come over to Visual Studio Code and paste it. So there's my if statement for my letter grade. I'm going to hit Option Shift F to format my code. All right. So first things I want to do is this is not called letter grade anymore. Letter grade 1, it's called letter grade. So I'm going to do a Command F, and here I'm going to hit the little drop down. And I'm going to say replace every instance of letter grade 1 with letter grade. And then I'm going to replace all 11, and that fixed a lot of the if statement. The other thing I'm going to replace is GPA 1, and I'm going to replace it with, what did I call it? I called it single class GPA. Single class GPA. And I'm going to replace all of those. And so that should give me an if statement that meets the requirements here, and it will convert each unique class into the GPA we want. So I'm going to close my search. What I'm going to do is I am going to run this, and I'm just going to make sure that it is converting my GPA as expected. So let's go live. And I don't know why my prompt is off screen. Well, all right. It looks like my screen is frozen, so I'm going to pause this recording and I will be back in a minute. Well, that was exciting. I had to restart my computer. I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll reload this page to get our tests. This is how many classes this semester. And I'm actually just going to cancel out of this dialog so that we can do this in debugger mode just to make sure everything is working. So I'm going to come over here to sources and I'm going to put a breakpoint in our for loop and reload our page. Says how many classes this semester. I'm going to just test 2 just to make sure everything's working. So if number of classes, right now number of classes is 2, that's great. I'm going to hit the next button. It drops into the loop, says what letter grade for class 1. I'll enter A. It says how many credits was class 1 should come up next, and how many credits was it worth. Let's just do 3. If we hit the next button, number of credits is 3, letter grade is, come on, work with me here, is an A. So we should expect it to drop down and set single class GPA to 4.0. We'll hit next. Sure enough, it does. Single GPA is 4.0. The loop increments and we start over. What is your prompt for this? Let's enter a D minus and then it's going to ask us how many credits it was worth. We'll say it's worth 1. And then we'll drop into our if statement. Looks like it does correctly evaluate this condition. And it does successfully set single class GPA to 0.07. So we know everything's working. Let's go back over to our code. Let's stop this and go over to our code and keep going. Okay, so now that I've got the letter grade, I do need to add it to my running array of class GPAs. So I'm going to say class GPAs dot push, and that will push this letter grade in to that array. So we'll put single class GPA, and then the other one we need to do is we need to figure out what the class weight was. Well, that's just going to be whatever the number of credits was. So we'll say class weight dot push, and we're going to push in the number of credits. Now, class weight implies that there's only a single class weight being stored here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this. So I'm going to right click and then right here where it says rename symbol, I'm going to click that and I'm going to add an S to the end because this is multiple weights. And if we do that and we come down here to the bottom, we'll see it updated that reference as well. So now class weights.push, we're going to push in the number of credits that it was worth. And if we've done everything correctly, now this should store an array of what their grade was as a number, and this should store an array of what of how much each class was worth. So now I need to go look. So the next thing we need to do is run a for loop for the calculation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it up here under my for loop for the calculation so I can run that calculation. Whenever you see sum of a whole bunch of things, that's kind of just a for loop. So what we're going to do is we're going to need to take every grade point and multiply it by the number of credits. Whenever you hear every, one thing you could think to do is to create a for loop. So I'm going to create a for loop here and I'm going to say let counter to equal 0. And then how long do I want to run this for loop? Well, I want to run it for every single grade point. Well, where are the grade points being stored? They're being stored in class GPAs. So I want to run it for just less than class GPAs dot length. If there are 5 letter grades in class GPAs, the length will be 5, and we're going to run 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will give us 5 total. Um, and then we'll say counter 2 plus plus because we want to increment this loop as we go. So um, final GPA is going to be what our final GPA is, but I just realized we need a running sum of GPAs. So I'm going to say let running GP sum, because we're going to say grade point sum, and we're going to set that equal to 0. And then down here, what we want to do is we want to take each grade point and multiply it by the number of credits. Well, that means we need to go into the class GPAs to get the grade points. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into class GPAs at the counter 2 position. That will give us whatever the GPA is for the current iteration. So if we're at 0, it'll give us the first grade point. If we're at 1, it'll give us the second grade point, and so on and so forth. And then we want to multiply that by the number of credits that that class was worth. Well, if you noticed here, we pushed in at the exact same time. We pushed in the grade point and the number of credits it's worth, which means these arrays are parallel, which means whatever's in the 0 position of this array corresponds with what's in the 0 position of this array, which means that if we want to multiply a grade point by its associated credits, all we need to do is access the exact same position in both arrays. So what we'll do is we'll take the class GPAs and multiply at a certain position and multiply it by class weights at the exact same position. So that will give us this part of the calculation. But in order for us to sum them over time, we need to add it to whatever the sum was previously. So the first time the loop runs, it's going to be 0. The next time it runs, it's going to be 0 plus whatever this is plus whatever it is for the current loop. Well, if you want to continually add on to a variable, then you want to use the plus equals sign. Well, what variable do we want to continually add on to? Well, up here, we created a running GP sum, and that would be a running sum of the grade points multiplied by their weight. So we're going to say running GP sum is equal to whatever was previously in it plus all of this new information. Okay, great. So now we've multiplied together and we've added them to the running sum. The other part of this equation is that we need to sum credits over time. So actually, what we also need to do up here is we need a sum of credits. So we'll say let credit sum equal 0. And so what we want to do is if the first class they took was 3 credits and the second class they took was 2 credits, then we want the sum to be 5 credits. So basically, we want to take out of the class weights whatever that is and add it to a running total. So we're going to do the same thing we did on the line above, except this time we're going to do it for credit sum. We're going to say credit sum plus equals the class weights at the counter 2 position. What this does is it says take whatever the credit sum was, which originally it's going to be 0, and then add in what the new credit value is. So for the first class, let's say we entered 3, 0 plus 3 is 3. Second class, we entered 2, 3 plus 2 is 5. And so that should work. But I'm going to put a comment in here and I'm going to say calculate the sum of GP times credits. And then on this one, I'm going to say keep running sum, and we'll save that. Perfect. All right. Now that we've got all of that together, let's go test it again. So we'll come over here. We know this first for loop is working, so we don't even need to test it. Let's reload this page, hit cancel. We know the first for loop is working. Let's double check our second for loop here. So we'll reload. How many classes this semester? 3. What is the letter grade for class 1? A. How many credits was it worth? 3. What is the letter grade for class 2? B. How many credits was it worth? 2. What is the letter grade for class 3? C. How many credits was it worth? 1. All right. So if we hover over class GPAs, we can see that it's storing 4, 3, and 2. It converted the A to a 4.0, the B to a 3.0, and the C to a 2.0, and they're being stored in exactly that order. The class that was associated with them, the first one was worth 3 credits, the second one was worth 2 credits, and the last one was worth 1 credit. That means that that part of our loop works successfully. Now we're about to start the next loop. So our running GP sum is 0. We do know that class GPAs at the counter 2 position. Counter 2 hasn't started yet, but it's going to be 0. We know that that's 4, and we're going to be multiplying it by the associated spot in the class weights class, which is 3. 4 times 3 is 12, so once this loop runs, this should go from 0 to 12. So we're going to hit next, and if we hover over running GP sum, we get 12. And then we're going to take the credit sum and add on however many credits are in the 0 position, which is 3. So credit sum should go from 0 to 3. When we hit next, credit sum is now 3. We'll iterate on our loop. Running GP sum is now 18. Credit sum is now 5. And we'll run our loop one more time. And now our GP sum is 20 and our credit sum is 6. And then if we hit next, our loop ends. Okay, so we know that that loop works correctly. Let's go continue coding. All right, now we need to, there was an additional part to this statement. GPA is equal to those parts divided by that part, which means we need to take this running sum and divide it by the credit sum. So to do that, we're going to say GPA or final GPA equals the running grade point sum divided by the credit sum. That gives us our final GPA. And then we take that if statement, and I'm going to go grab it from my last project. So I'm going to open up Finder. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to find the first website folder, and I'm going to find where I stored my old code. And then I'm going to grab that if statement. So I'm going to hit Command Option I. I'm actually going to grab it from sources this time. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom, there is my if statement. I'm going to copy it, come back over here, paste it, and I accidentally put a backtick there, get rid of that. All right. So that should give us our total GPA. And let's see if there's anything else it wanted us to do. It doesn't look like it, so let's just double check that our GPA calculation is correct. So we're going to come over here to our array project, reload the page. How many classes this semester? 3. What is your letter grade for class 1? A. How many credits was worth? 3. Letter grade for class 2? B plus. 2. Letter grade for class 3? A. And we'll make that 3 credits. And it broke on this breakpoint, and we actually don't want to test that. We want to test our if statement. Oh, and it can't find a variable total GPA, and that is because we called ours final GPA. So our code broke. Let's go fix that. Right here, you can see why it broke. It said can't find variable total GPA. So we're going to come over here, and wherever there's total GPA, we're going to replace it with final GPA. So I'm going to hit Command F, search for total GPA, and replace it with final GPA. I'm going to replace all 5 instances, save my code, and go rerun it. How many classes this semester? 3. Letter grade for class 1A was worth 3 credits. Letter grade for class 2, B plus, is worth 2 credits. Letter grade for class 3, A, 3 credits. And it says your GPA is 3.825. Great job. Your consistent effort is paying off. Keep challenging yourself and building on this progress. So it looks like everything is working. All I'm going to do now is clean up. So keep my comments. Those comments are good so far. And I'm just going to change this from convert letter grade 1 to just convert letter grade to grade point. Right here, I'm going to say store in parallel. And then run my for loop calculation. And then if statement for final message. And then I don't need any of these comments because these were just explaining the project. So if we delete those and save our code and give it one last look through, it looks like we are done. And so that wraps up this project. Thanks for watching.